My friend called me a feeder bottom, and she was right. Let's talk about Succession.
Buckle up, fucklehead.
Chapter 1. Number 1 Boy. I was trying to figure out how I could really put myself in the headspace of Succession, and the best way to do that would have been like a pantsuit and a martini, but I hate martinis, and pantsuits are expensive and I don't own one, so I decided to just go flying in the opposite direction. After 39 episodes, Jesse Armstrong and his team have gone out on top, letting Succession come to an end after several of the strongest episodes in its entire run. There was probably enough audience interest to sustain at least a 5th season, and probably several more after that, but Armstrong and his writer's room felt that the end of season 4 wrapped up the story that they wanted to tell. And what was that story at the end? Because if you look at the events of the finale based on just the plot points, it kinda seems like business as usual. Logan gets his way, even from beyond the grave, as Matsson buys Waystar. Tom yes-mans his way into a position of great relevance as Matsson's pain sponge. Kendall shoots for the stars and falls flat on his face. Siobhan is left on the outside looking in. Roman smiles in pain over a martini as everyone writes him off as a joke once again. Greg is stuck clinging on to Tom if he ever wants to hang on at Waystar. And Connor is off doing something less relevant that doesn't have much bearing on the events of the plot.
I'll tell you what a nice church it is. Conroy was interested in politics from a very young age.
Same old song and dance. Succession may have been structured around this never-ending cycle of deals, backstabs, and corporate politics, but the show is about so much more than that. It's a show about generational trauma. It's a show about the capricious whims of the powerful. It's a show about Lord Acton's axiom. It's a show about how the people who claim the birthright to rulership are just as broken and sad as the rest of us. As number 1 boy Kendall Roy puts it, it's a show about how the poison drips through. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start at the beginning. I hear it's a very good place to start. Succession is the story of the uber-wealthy Roy family and the people in their orbit, maneuvering for power and influence at the News Corp-adjacent Waystar Royco Corporation. Our mainest character is Kendall Roy, the eldest son of CEO Logan Roy, who was first told he would run his father's company at the age of 7. Kendall's single-minded drive for control of Waystar, which his father cruelly yanks from his grip in the pilot, is the kinetic energy behind Succession. I mean, look at the name of the show. The king is going to need an heir one of these days, and Kendall is laser-focused on being that heir, no matter how ill-suited for the role he may be.
The new strategy is really just a refinement of all this great work. It goes, well, the working title is Go Fuck Yourself.
Kendall is, to put it gently, cringe. He's a 40-something divorcee who papers over the holes in his heart where parental love should be, with drugs, corporate buzzwords, and desperate attempts to be relatable. He's the kind of guy who will say the shiz in a business meeting in 2018. He's the kind of guy who will write an original rap song titled L to the OG for his father and sing it at his birthday party in front of an audience of the most powerful people in the world.
Is he about to strip?
I think he's going to masturbate on stage to a photo of Dad.
He's the kind of guy who goes full Chappaquiddick and then still has the audacity to call running a Fortune 500 company his birthright. Jeremy Strong's performance as Kendall is an all-timer, no matter how crazy it drove Brian Cox. And he breathes life into a character that was tricky to get right. Kendall, like every other main character on this show, is a despicable person. He's relentlessly terrible to women. He styles himself as a revolutionary, despite having a multi-billion-dollar net worth. He doesn't really give a shit about his children, and he carries himself with the air of a man who doesn't know what he's doing but thinks it doesn't matter. There should be no reason for us to give one single fuck about the emotional well-being of Kendall Logan Roy, yes, really, but Strong taps into this reservoir of pain that just keeps bringing us back to him. That's a trick every performer on this show pulls to some extent, but nobody does it quite like Jeremy Strong. Kendall Roy has been preparing to run his father's company since the age of 7, and that lifelong pursuit has destroyed him. He turned to drugs to numb the pain, which alienated his wife and children. Rava, his scene-stealing ex, makes it very clear how everyone sees Kendall when she decides to tell him that she's with somebody.
I'm just hoping this one doesn't leave Coke smeared all over the kids' iPads.
Jesus. Kendall's battle with addiction is an undercurrent throughout the show. He's fresh out of rehab when we first pick up this story, but he's off the wagon by the 7th episode and struggles to ever get back on it. He tries meth for the first time in that episode after ordering a vodka at a bar and slowly draining it in one unbroken, uncomfortable take. At the end of the previous episode, he tried to lead a vote of no confidence against his father at a board meeting and got himself kicked out of the company for his trouble. He's lost the driving force behind his life, the mission handed down to him at age 7. Addiction doesn't just spring from nothing. People don't decide to get hooked on cocaine. According to addiction specialist Dr. Gabor Mate, addiction is often a symptom of untreated trauma, and our number 1 boy has that in spades. Both of Kendall's parents were emotionally unavailable and often absent, largely leaving the Roy siblings to figure out how to grow up themselves. Their every physical need was met thanks to their father's largesse, but their emotional needs were largely left by the wayside. Logan and Caroline, their ice queen of a mother,
Thank you for coming, Dad.
Yeah, well, just following orders.
I cannot see.
did not invest the necessary time and effort to raise their children into emotionally sound, complete people, leaving us with the dysfunctional wrecks you see before you. We'll get to the others later on, but what Logan did to Kendall strikes me as especially insidious. 7 years old! Logan pulled aside his son at age 7 like fucking Mufasa and told him that everything the light touched would belong to him someday, and then just kept dangling that carrot to try to get Kendall to follow along. But every time he got close, every time Logan saw him making a real reach for power, he pushed him down like it was nothing. Before Logan's unceremonious death in the 3rd episode of Season 4, I count 5 instances where Kendall tried to make an actual grab for power. His assumption that Logan would name him as CEO in the pilot, the vote of no confidence in episode 6, the bear hug with Sandy and Stewie in episode 10, the "This is the day his reign ends" press conference at the end of season 2, and his attempt to block the Gojo sale alongside Shiv and Roman at the end of season 3. Every time, Logan melted Icarus Roy's wax wings and sent him plummeting into the ocean below, ridiculing him for bothering to try. It's like a sadistic little game. Kendall believes that his one purpose in this life is to inherit his father's throne, because his father told him so. But Logan has no interest in surrendering said throne, so Kendall feels he has to take it from him. Logan denies him every time, relishing in beating his scion once again. We don't get the 7 years old reveal until the finale, and it clarifies so much of Kendall's character. His relevant siblings have both expressed desire for the CEO job, but neither of them display the single-minded, ferocious drive for it that Kendall does. And it's made all the more tragic by the fact that Kendall is wildly unsuited for the job. It's made clear to us time and time again, whether he's telling a banker with leverage to buy the company out from under him to fuck off, or inventing numbers for a new retirement community out of thin air and badgering his accountant to make them work, or getting a waiter killed while on a bender and in pursuit of more drugs. He simply does not have the juice, but he's convinced himself that his life is meaningless if he does not reach this finish line his father painted for him. At the end of season 2, Waystar Royco is in crisis mode. The cruises scandal has exploded into the public eye, exposing all of us to the delightful terminology Waystar used to bury the abuse and sometimes murder of migrant workers on their ships.
That means it's a sex worker or a migrant worker at a foreign port, not involving a guest or a permanent member of staff.
No real person involved.
Someone has to take the bullet for all this. It very, very obviously should be Logan. He's been the man in charge all these years, and there's no way this endlessly paranoid monarch would have let one of his fiefdoms give out hush money payments without his sign-off. But, come on, he's not about to let something as silly as the consequences of his own actions get in the way of ruling the world. So instead, he pulls Kendall aside after a season of blackmailing him into submission over the waiter's death, and tells his eldest son who matters that he's going under the bus for cruises. His reasoning is hollow bullshit. He talks about how the Inca would sacrifice a child to save a harvest because only the loss of something so loved could make the sun rise again. He's just covering his ass, and Kendall knows it. He's shoving his own child into the line of fire to save his skin because Logan Roy only ever really cared about Logan Roy. Kendall knows this is the end of the line for him if he goes through with it, so he asks his father if he ever really thought he could run the company. Logan's response?
You're not a killer. You have to be a killer.
Holy fucking shit. Just imagine being in Kendall's shoes for a moment there. This man has instilled in you an endless desire for power, specifically the power that he holds. And now, not only is he telling you that you're never going to have it, he's telling you that you were never even suited for it in the first place. I mean, no wonder Kendall walks out on stage at that press conference and does his best to knife Logan in the back. Wouldn't you? But the worst part is, Logan isn't wrong. Kendall isn't a killer. He tries to be one. He tries to take down Logan. He tries to kill the sale to Gojo. He tries to climb on his siblings' backs to sit on the throne he believes is his, but he fails at every turn. Logan dies without ever giving his son closure, and Gojo acquires Waystar when Kendall's own sister, the deciding vote, shoots him down at the last second, saying she didn't think he'd be good at the job. And it is at this moment when the real Kendall Roy comes out to play. We get glimpses of this real Kendall throughout the show, peeking through his fuck the patriarchy facade. We see it when Shiv doesn't go along with his plan to dethrone Logan.
You're a fucking twat.
We see it when Kendall declares Rava to be too online after she wants to take their children out of the city when he threw his support behind a fascist.
Ken, you've got to stop this. You've got to stop. You've got to stop. I do not consider it safe. Okay?
Bullshit. Pretext. You're trying to hurt me?
We see it when he berates his assistant for wanting to leave him after he elevated said fascist.
It's kind of ridiculous, Jess, though. I mean, if you feel sorry about it, maybe you should reconsider.
Kendall Roy may be in anguish. He may be an abuse victim. He may be worthy of sympathy. But what truly defines Kendall Roy is his bottomless sense of entitlement. The Waystar CEO job is his. His plans are obviously the best in every situation, and everyone who doesn't go along with them is either conspiring against him or an idiot. He is the eldest son. Except, you know, it isn't. They aren't. And he's not. When Shiv steps away from the board meeting in the finale, the vote on the Gojo deal down to her, Kendall follows her, ignoring her requests for a moment to think, and he pushes. Like always. Kendall pushes and pushes and pushes, thinking if he can just conjure up the right piece of
Complicated airflow.
he can get Shiv to see reason. Except he's not trying to get her to see reason. Not really. He's throwing a temper tantrum, like the stunted child that he is. He finally pushes too far, and Shiv snaps that he can't be king because he killed somebody, and Kendall sinks to his lowest point. He denies it. He claims he made up the confession to close out season 3 at Caroline's wedding, proving once and for all that there are no depths he will not plumb to get what he truly wants. Listen to this fucking baby.
I'm the eldest boy!
He's not! Connor is! Shiv has so utterly dismantled her brother's fragile claims to the right to rule that all he can do is lie and bluster, and his siblings see right through it. He literally gets in a physical fight with Roman in a glass-walled office in front of everybody at Waystar Royco over his siblings trying to stop him from fulfilling his mission. The Emperor has no clothes, and he only thinks he did because Daddy told him so. Succession closes out on Kendall Roy, the #1 boy, staring out at the gray Hudson River, his face drained of emotion, of purpose. Now what? Now what is the question the Succession finale poses for many of its characters, but especially for Kendall. Everyone else in our story has some kind of way forward. Even Roman, who spent the last 2 episodes of the show falling apart at the seams, has his life of meaningless hedonism to return to if that smile over a martini told us anything. But Kendall? The dream is dead. He will never, ever be CEO of Waystar. Matsson hates him and has pretty effectively cut the Roy clan out of the inner circle. Kendall tells Shiv he thinks he'll die if he doesn't get to do this job, and while that is wildly unfair and petulant, it's also kinda true. Season 3, Episode 8 sees Kendall get truly brutally beaten by his father in their public spat over who should take the fall for cruises, and what happens? He drunkenly climbs on a pool floaty in front of his children and lets himself fall off to drown. He doesn't, and I've seen some people say they wish he had. I disagree. While that would have been a compelling, tragic ending to the story of Kendall Roy, it has nothing on the tragedy of the ending we got. Even with his father gone, even with the Roy name and fortune, Kendall cannot be king. No matter how much he believes himself to be the rightful heir, no matter how many quasi-fraudulent presentations he gives, no matter how many corporate buzzwords he spits out, Kendall cannot be king. And now he has to live with that. And I find that to be a far greater tragedy than a drunken suicide. His own sister said she couldn't stomach him and declared him unworthy of the seat he'd fought to hold for decades, even though doing so would put 2 men who betrayed her without a second thought into power. I mean, better them than Dude Bro Hamlet. John Barrowman's Dream Song 29 holds the titles to each of the 4 season finales. Nobody is ever missing, This is Not for Tears, All the Bells Say, and With Open Eyes. While all of the core characters have important parts to play in each of these finales, the in-story analog for Dream Song 29 is clearly Kendall. The tragedy of Kendall Roy is the core of each of these episodes, all built around how this man is not capable of reaching the one goal that's driven his entire life. As Barrowman says, but never did Henry, as he thought he did, end anyone and hacks her body up and hide the pieces where they may be found. He knows. He went over everyone, and nobody's missing. Nobody is ever missing. Kendall is not a killer, and Kendall is not the king. Chapter 2, Macbeth the Knife. Shiv's name is not an accident. When you first hear that word, the thing you think of is a blade handcrafted by a prisoner for the purpose of a sneak attack. And what could possibly better describe Siobhan Roy? Handcrafted by her father to be a killer, but forever doomed to be used by the people in her life as a tool. Logan was a prisoner of his own ambition and trauma, and the apple dropped straight down with Shiv. Shiv understands the game of corporate politics in a way her brothers really don't, even if Logan's kept her out of the business most of her life. Engie lemonade. She's the one who's capable of maintaining a public facade of legitimacy despite having no real principles to speak of once you get down to the nitty-gritty.
I'm paying particular and specific attention to corporate responsibility.
Logan may have been a wild beast at his core, but we only know that because we get to see him at his most intimate and unhinged.
You're playing toy fucking soldiers! Go on! Fuck off!
To the world at large, Logan Roy is a great man with an air of prestige and legitimacy around him that has to be actively cultivated and maintained. Plenty of people hate him, sure, but he's respectable enough to seriously attract the eye of a liberal media empire like Pierce. Shiv goes out of her way to maintain her image as one of the good billionaires who cares about the people and the health of democracy, but that's all it is. An image. We see the real Siobhan Roy in all her ugliness. How she offers hand sanitizer to someone who has to touch a normal person, how she offers her services to a fascist despite all her high-minded claims to his horribleness, and how she disregards her views the second she has an opportunity to lead her father's hate speech machine. Shiv goes so far as to talk a sexual assault victim out of testifying to Congress, a move so dirty and despicable that even Holly Hunter's scheming Rhea Jarrell couldn't go through with it. Shiv is just like her dad. She will do anything to maintain her grip on power, no matter how tenuous that grip may be. So who could possibly be a better partner for her than the
Striving and parochial
Tom Wambsgans? From the first moment we see them together, with Tom stressing over getting Logan a gift for his birthday while Shiv doesn't really care about his concerns, it's pretty obvious that their relationship is not a good one. Their partnership seems to be built largely out of convenience. Tom wants access to wealth and power, and Shiv wants a secure, skin-deep relationship with someone who can't really hurt her. Love with infinite strings attached. Lord and Lady Macbeth for the digital age. And yet somehow, after 4 seasons of these two people stabbing each other in the back in every way they could possibly imagine, the marriage between Tom Wambsgans and Siobhan Roy is one of the only bonds on the show that has not fully collapsed.
You wanna actually clear the air? Fine. You betrayed me.
You were going to see me get sent to fucking prison! Shiv!
The last shot of Matthew Macfadyen and Sarah Snook in the whole series is of the two of them just barely holding hands after Tom was named American CEO of Waystar, passing up Shiv. This was their plan from the beginning, wasn't it? Remember back in season 1, the two of them constantly talked about the plan, some overarching scheme to properly entrench themselves into power? There was a lot of bullshit and a lot of pain for all involved over the course of these 4 seasons, but we basically ended up where the plan said. Tom is in charge of Waystar while Shiv pursues her own endeavors outside of the company. It worked! The end of each season is built around a major point in Tom and Shiv's relationship. Season 1 ends at their wedding, Season 2 sees Tom say he may be happier without her, Season 3 ends with Tom betraying her, and Season 4 ends with the two of them creeping towards some shape or form of reconciliation. Maybe. Hey, at least they're finally being honest with each other.
You have hurt me more than you can possibly imagine.
I don't like you. I don't even care about you.
Woof. This is a marriage between two bad people who are bad for each other. In that earth-shattering fight in the 4th last episode, Tom and Shiv finally let out 4 seasons worth of tension and anger about each other. Tom accuses Shiv of not loving him. Shiv accuses Tom of only being with her to gain access to power. Tom says Shiv should not have children, despite her being, unbeknownst to him, pregnant with his child. And Shiv says Tom cost her her last 6 months with her father. It is brutal. It is uncompromising. It really should be the death of whatever it is these two crazy kids ever had, but somehow it isn't? We'll come back to Season 4, Episode 8 a little later on, but the last 2 episodes generally show a strange gentility in the interactions between these two. There's still a tense argument when Shiv finds out Matsson plans to name Tom to be American CEO over her, but we still come back to that last strange little handhold. Not even a hold, really. Shiv just rests her hand mostly on Tom's wrist. And to me, it reads as an acknowledgement that this strange, fucked up bond is really the only honest relationship Shiv has. Her brothers are lost causes. Her father is gone, her mother is a toxic wasteland, and she doesn't really have any friends to speak of. Shiv and Tom have put each other through hell. Shiv treated him like an emotional punching bag for years, never giving his emotions much care while always centering herself in any scheming the two ever did. But now Tom is punching back with gusto. He ruined her bid for Power to close out Season 3, and he ends the series as the top American dog at Waystar. He has asserted himself as an equal to Shiv, and now the two of them have wrung every last drop of poison out of each other in that balcony fight. They have cleared the air, and at the beginning of the finale, Shiv calls Tom and asks him if he'd be interested in an emotionally open, honest relationship. Tom says he doesn't know. But then at the end, he's the one to offer up his hand. No matter how many times the scorpion stings the frog comes right on back to offer another ride. Season 4 is quite the journey for these two. An episode before the balcony fight, they meet at a party and fuck, and then have a fascinating post-coital talk. We get a crumb of context for how they met, but most of the conversation is about the basis of their relationship. Tom confesses that all his life, he's thought about money and how to get it. And he admits that, on some level, his relationship with Shiv is transactional. But he points out that she's hardly a hopeless romantic, too.
I like nice things, I do. And if you think that's shallow, why don't you throw out all your stuff for love? Throw out your necklaces and your jewels for a date at a 3-star Italian? Yeah? Come and live with me in a trailer park.
Shiv's response?
Wow. I'd follow you anywhere for love. Tom Wambsgans.
They both immediately burst out laughing, but there's something there, right? These people have hurt each other more times than they can count. Tom was never subtle about his desire to climb the corporate ladder, and his first instinct in every conflict is to figure out how to protect himself. Shiv belittles and brushes her husband aside at every turn, never prioritizing him and never really thinking of their marriage as a partnership. Logan called it back in Season 1.
You're marrying a man fathoms beneath you because you don't want to risk being betrayed.
Pretty brutal thing to say to your daughter, especially with said man standing right there, but he's not wrong. That is exactly why Shiv marries Tom, even though she doesn't love him. But through it all, Tom and Shiv are together in a car, at the end, hand in hand, with a foothold on power. Shiv was given a clear choice at the end. Either she could elevate Kendall, or she could elevate Tom. Neither option was especially appealing, but by that point, her hat was well out of the ring. It had been out of the ring since she dropped the
"Oh, for f***'s sake, Dad, just tell him it's gonna be me"
with the Pierces all the way back in Season 2, a moment that showed that Siobhan was just as out of step with how to play this game as her brothers. So Siobhan Roy, stuck between a rock and a hard place, weighed her options. If she voted for Kendall, the CE bro would hold on to power and continue his descent into being just like Daddy Dearest, likely continuing to push her out of the limelight while claiming to keep her in the loop. If she voted for the Gojo deal, and by extension Tom, she knew for a fact she would be getting removed from the company alongside her brothers, but she would also forever have the leverage of having been the one to vote them into power. Faced with two bad options, Shiv picked the one that could build a bridge in her marriage. Better to choose to be out of power than to be gaslit out of it. That real, honest relationship may be a possibility now, because Shiv Roy was the only one of her relevant siblings who could see anything resembling the bigger picture. She sucks just as hard as the rest of them, make no mistake, but she didn't elevate the fascist. And when she had the opportunity to make her brother CEO and keep the company under family control for decades to come, she saw the truth. Kendall was unfit for the job and should not have it. I don't know if Tom is any more fit for the job, and Lucas Matson should not be in charge of anything, but Kendall should be very far away from those levers of power. Shiv made the right call, even with her brother screaming in her face about how much he deserved it. Tom understands the game because he has to. He had to learn the rules to survive in this cutthroat world, while the Roys were born into profound privilege. They think they deserve to run the world, but Tom knows he doesn't. Tom wants power. He wants to live in the lap of luxury and eat songbirds under a napkin and drink vodka full of edible gold, but he is not cursed with the same pride and entitlement as his wife and brothers-in-law. Tom Wambsgans will brown nose his way to the top. He will suck the biggest dick in any room he happens to be in if it will secure his place in corporate America.
Plus, with Shiv, there's also, she's somewhat, we're a bit clickety-clickly, if you know what I'm saying.
Right, like...
A little bit... I want to fuck her.
This is not some great victory for Tom, though. While he now holds the same title Logan did, he is in no sense Logan's equal. Matson owns him, and he's made it very clear he does not see Tom as a partner. Tom is going to eat every ounce of shit Matson throws at him, and it seems like there's going to be quite a lot of it with Matson's intention to take a hacksaw to Waystar. Matson is the true successor to Logan Roy's throne, and the late Titan's son-in-law is all he ever was. An empty suit, willing to be a whipping boy for anyone who will have him.
I'm helping you, Tom. This is why people don't take you seriously, because your shoes are so fucking white. Ow!
Your earlobes are thick and chewy.
What the fuck?
Yeah, like barnacle meat.
True Love, Chapter 3, Slime Puppy. Oh gods, where do I even begin? Roman Roy has more issues than Newsweek. Roman Roy is so fucked up that Salvador Dali would take one look at him and say, I can't do anything to make this more surreal. Roman Roy... Well, I'll let the most competent employee at Waystar Royco tell you all about Roman Roy.
You disgusting little pig. You're pathetic.
Yes, he is, Jerry. Roman never met a situation he couldn't turn into a sick joke. This guy makes jokes about coming at the sight of his sister breastfeeding. His justification for supporting a fascist presidential candidate is that, quote, nothing matters and the country's just a big pussy waiting to get fucked. Life is just a gag to Roman, something to be observed and laughed at. Roman Roy is Statler and Waldorf from the Muppets with a humiliation kink. But his position as the comic relief of Succession is the tragedy of Roman Roy's character. Of the Roy siblings, he's the only one we know for a fact was physically abused by Logan.
No, it was clear. Yeah, you tortured the old dinosaur. You barbecued him live.
Don't fuck with me!
He once beat Roman with a slipper until he cried because he had the audacity to order lobster on vacation. And when this is brought up in front of Roman, he justifies it. He says it's bad manners to order the most expensive menu item when you're not paying. The fawn response is a common feature among abuse victims, understandable as trying to resist a threat by becoming more appealing to the threat, in the words of family therapist Pete Walker. Whenever anyone brings up Logan's mistreatment of Roman, the youngest Roy's first instinct is to take his father's side. He'll say everyone wants to hit him because he's annoying, or he'll agree with his father when he says that physical violence isn't the kind of thing he'd do, because that is the only response Logan would accept. We only get glimpses into what the Roys' lives were like before the pilot. We don't get any flashbacks, and we only get a few stories. But what we do see speaks volumes. Take the dog pound story.
He used to lock me in a cage.
What the fuck?
No, that's a true story. Oh wait, you're pretending that you don't remember the dog pound.
As Roman remembers it, Kendall would make him wear a leash and get in a dog kennel where he would have to... He would have to eat dog food. God. I want people to pay me to do this. As Roman remembers it, Kendall would make him wear a leash and get in a dog kennel where he would have to eat dog food to get out, all at age 4. He brings this up casually, but it comes across as a core part of his trauma. But Connor has a different recollection. He says Roman loved the dog pound game, and that the dog food he had to eat to get out was chocolate cake. He also says Logan encouraged Kendall and Roman to fight for dominance to isolate the weaker child. Hence Roman's stint in military school, which as far as Connor knows, Roman asked for. Connor has no incentive to lie here, and it's easy to understand why Roman might embrace military school. He clearly wasn't getting love at home. His father beat him, his mother was icy, and his relationships with his siblings have always been rocky.
Fuck you, man.
Wait, stop it! Stop it! Are you fucking insane? Stop! I'm charging it! No! See?
Military school obviously didn't take, just look at the kind of person Roman ended up as, but it was just another stop on a lifelong journey for positive validation that is yet to really bear fruit. It's a vicious cycle. Roman's family treats him like dirt. They refuse to take him seriously, but he still craves love from them. That craving shapes his personality to the point that he's so damaged he has trouble finding or sustaining any kind of real relationship. Roman's so used to getting hurt by the people he cares about that he's terrified of opening himself up to genuine connection. For him to feel something, it has to be wrong. He has to be, in Jerry's words, a slime puppy. Something revolting and appalling, worthy of degradation rather than affection.
You know what you are?
What am I?
You are a sick fuck. You're a sick fucking animal.
Yeah?
His longest romantic entanglement in the series is with Tabitha, a call girl he met at Tom's bachelor party. Tom actually hooked up with her. He came in her mouth and she put it back in his, and then he swallowed it in a very heterosexual way. Roman brings this girl to Tom and Shiv's wedding and makes sure that the groom sees him. You know, in a very normal, healthy, well-adjusted way. Roman is so fine, you guys. He's definitely not collapsing in on himself because there's a howling black hole at the center of his heart where his family's love should be.
But Dad's gonna try and win at therapy.
Well, he hasn't done therapy with me yet. I'm an expert.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah, this is what it looks like when you resolve all your issues.
Uh-huh.
Despite the fact that Tabitha is drop-dead gorgeous and quite charming, Roman can't ever get it up with her. The best he can do is suggest she play dead while he fucks her, but that's not much of a turn-on for Tabitha, who finds masturbating with her electric toothbrush in the bathroom to be a preferable alternative. Do you know who Roman can get it up for? Mommy! Jerry! Roman and Jerry have the most out-there dynamic in Succession, and it's one I find endlessly fascinating. The first time I watched the scene with the slime puppy epithet in it, I outright screamed. It's the first time Roman ever expresses any kind of arousal, and it's because a maternal figure is directing disgust at him. He even eggs her on!
You little slime puppy.
Yes. Yeah, what else am I?
Roman's daddy issues are one thing, but he might as well walk around wearing a sign that says, "I have a negative relationship with my mother," in neon letters. He and Jerry develop a strange sort of alliance as the second season wears on, working together to advance both of their interests toward the top of the Waystar corporate ladder. With Kendall now serving as Logan's beaten lapdog and Shiv helplessly chasing the CEO carrot, it's a realistic proposal. Jerry is endlessly capable, and she's one of the only people at Waystar with a solid grip on how to operate in this world. Roman may make everything into a joke, but he's not stupid. While Shiv is the most like their father, Roman definitely inherited most of his business sense. Granted, that generally just makes him a worse person, but it's not like that matters here. We get 2 scenes of Roman and Jerry doing sexual things? It's hard to explain. It's phone sex, and then it's what I describe as guided masturbation through a door, and it gets Roman so worked up he can just about see cum leaking out of his ears. Tying kinks to childhood trauma is a little gauche these days. I'm not trying to be Sigmund Freud here, but come on, look at his mother! Lady Carolyn Collingwood is a stone-cold bitch, and while she is a delight to watch, I shudder to imagine what it would be like to grow up with her.
So, how are you?
I might just as well ask you if you're going to go into all that.
She goes so far as to admit to her daughter that she probably shouldn't have had children. Roman is desperate for some kind of maternal figure in his life, someone to guide him and validate him and...
Just be brave, okay?
Yes, Mommy.
It's all there, people! I was praying for Roman to find somebody in this last season. He keeps pushing his luck with Jerry in season 3, and eventually she gets sick of it and tries to set boundaries, and then discards him to advance her position with Logan. Oh, and Roman sends his dad a picture of his dick that he meant to send to Jerry, because Roman Roy has never encountered a moment he couldn't fail to meet.
But it doesn't serve my interests. How does it serve my interests?
I can fix him, okay? He's my little baby boy and... Sorry about that. I did not get my wish. I had hoped that Roman would find an external source of validation and genuine affection that would pull him away from his shitty, toxic family, but he is just as shitty and toxic as the rest of them, and Jesse Armstrong wasn't gonna let me off the hook that easy. Roman gets plenty of moments to shine in season 4, a lot of which come in that 8th episode I keep talking about. But we get to see, clear as day, what kind of a person Roman Roy really is. His mommy issues have led to him having rough relationships with the women in his life, especially after his dad dies and sends him into a tailspin. The last interaction he ever had with his father was a phone call, where Logan informed him that he would have to tell Jerry she's getting fired, one of the most cold-hearted things that old fuck ever did on this show. Jerry initially brushes it off, and it doesn't seem like it'll ever come up again, but 3 episodes pass, and lo and behold...
You are a weak monarch in a dangerous interregnum.
In episode 6, the incredible Fuck Brother Bandwagon and company head to Los Angeles, where Kendall tries to kill the Gojo deal by promising eternal life to the elderly.
Big shoes. Big, big shoes. Big, big shoes. Big, big shoes.
Great work, Ken. But Roman spends the episode trying to emulate his dad and failing with flying colors. Roman really doesn't have any understanding of what his dad actually did on a day-to-day basis. As far as he knows, Logan's job was doing whatever the fuck he wanted, up to and including firing important underlings on a whim. Roman's emotions are in the tank, which he actively refuses to acknowledge, saying he's totally fine and has pre-grieved. And now he has a meeting with Waystar studio head Joy Palmer. He gives her his pitch. He will give the studio roughly $5 gazillion for them to start cranking out hits, because that's obviously how it works, right? To the Roys, every problem has the same solution. Stuff it full of money until it goes away. Joy gently pushes back, saying that they're having trouble retaining talent thanks to the hard right nature of ATN, which is not a problem more zeros on a check are gonna fix. Roman gets peeved And when Joy laughs at Roman's remark that he could fire her on the spot if he wanted to, he does exactly that and walks out of the restaurant. When Jerry furiously confronts Roman later, saying that he can't just fire someone as high up the ladder as Joy without at least talking to HR and legal first, Roman's response is basically that he can do whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah, I use drugs. I can do what I want, bitch.
Jerry reminds him that the only reason he and Kendall have any power right now is to shepherd the Gojo deal to its conclusion. She immediately twigs that Roman is trying to kill the deal and tries to warn him that his cockamamie scheme will not succeed.
Oh, no, Roman.
Yeah.
You cannot win against the money. The money is going to wash you away. Your dad knew. Tech is coming. We are over.
But this stunted man-child, faced with the one person who ever actually tried to mentor him for a position of real power, cannot handle it when she tells him that he's wrong. He accuses Jerry of not treating him with the respect he deserves and fires her too. He told Jerry that he needed her to think that he was as good as his dad, and she just couldn't do it, because he isn't. Roman may have inherited some measure of Logan's business sense, but he failed to gain any real understanding of his killer instinct. Roman thinks being in charge means wearing a tailored suit and firing anybody who disagrees with you. Granted, that is a non-zero amount of what Logan did, but Roman cannot handle the profound responsibility of running the hydra of a company like Waystar. Kendall can't either, but bless his stupid little heart, he tries. He goes balls to the wall with his Living Plus proposal and gains some positive buzz because of it. Roman? The boldest things he ever did while running the show were come on his office window and fire the one person who ever tried to help him professionally, after spending an entire season sexually harassing her while she tried to get him to stop. Okay, maybe I can't fix him. But Jesus, it just gets so much worse. Episode 7 sees Roman alienating the one person who ever tried to unconditionally love him. Connor Roy. Early in the show, Connor gets it in his head that he should run for president, an idea that definitely isn't crazy or fucking stupid. By now, it's the night before the election, and Connor is set to get enough votes that he might flip a few key states away from Jared Mencken, Roman's hand-picked fascist presidential candidate. Roman unabashedly backing Mencken is just one of many times I would say the words, "God damn it, Roman," but we'll come back to that later. For now, we find ourselves in the outlandish position that the actions of Connor fucking Roy could have a profound impact on the outcome of a presidential election. Sometimes I hate this show. Roman delivers Khan the message. If he drops out now and tells his voters to break for Mencken, this horrific hybrid of Donald Trump and Josh Hawley will give him an ambassadorship. The initial pitch is Somalia,
A little bit car bomby.
which eventually gets revised up to Slovenia or Slovakia, and then finally, Oman. Connor considers it seriously, but his wife, Willa, protests. Everyone she cares about hates Mencken, and she doesn't want to be associated with him. Also, this election is really important to Connor, and she thinks he should see it through, no matter how ridiculous he looks. So, Connor, listening to the one person who takes him seriously, tells Roman thanks, but no thanks. And Roman fucking snaps. He calls Willa Connor's wife, complete with the air quotes, and tells his oldest brother that everyone thinks he's a joke. Connor is the one person who's ever really tried to be good to Roman. When an interviewer asks Roman about a happy memory he has with his father, the only one he can conjure up is a fishing trip that Connor took him on. Con would be well within his rights to smack his spoiled brat of a brother upside the head, but instead he just leaves with his wife, letting Roman cook in his fascist soup all by himself. Oh, and before the end, Roman has his final conversation with Jerry. He tries to weasel out of firing her, saying it wasn't real, but Jerry does not have the patience for his bullshit. She lays out her terms clear as day. She wants millions of dollars, she wants complete control of the narrative, and if Waystar refuses, she will sue and leak the many photos of Roman's dick she has saved. Then, as she walks away, she can't help but twist the knife in her former protege.
I could have got you there. But nope.
Episode 8 will be its own chapter later on, but for now, all that you need to know is that by the end of it, Roman Roy is on top of the world. His preferred candidate has been declared victorious. Kinda. He's set to give the eulogy at his father's funeral, and he's well on his way to being the one head wearing the one crown at Waystar Royco. But if there's one thing Succession has taught us, is that there's nothing worse than being on top of the world before the end of the final episode. So you can probably guess how the rest of the season goes for Roman. Roman Roy, the man who can't get it up, the man who folds under pressure, predictably fails to deliver his prepared eulogy at his father's funeral. His uncle, brother, and sister all turn in spectacular performances, while Roman breaks down so completely he can't even get the words out through his tears. In the world of corporate politics, where image and masculinity are everything, breaking down at the pulpit is a death sentence. Mencken calls him the Grim Weeper, and Kendall says he fucked it. In just one day, Roman goes from world-conquering titan to sniveling wreck, walking into a crowd of anti-fascist protesters and goading them into punching him. It's pretty bleak stuff, but we've still got the finale to go.
You fucking cuck.
The series finale of Succession sees Roman Roy at his most pathetic. Having gotten a boo-boo from berating people protesting the collapse of democracy, Roman runs away to Mommy in Barbados with his tail between his legs, making Kendall and Shiv trek down there to get him. It's here where Shiv finds out that Matsson has played her for a fool and initially agrees to support Kendall. And Roman just kind of goes along with it in his dorky little Walmart t-shirt. He gives a token effort to put himself forward as a serious candidate, telling his siblings that he and Logan spoke just before Logan's death, and the old man told him that he wanted Rome to come back and run ATN, but neither of them really care. To be honest, I don't think Roman cares either. When they get back to New York for the board meeting, Roman starts spiraling again about why it isn't him, and then Kendall forces him into a tight hug, pressing his shoulder into his forehead so hard he breaks Roman's stitches. Roman asks why it can't be him, so Kendall provides an answer. It can't be him because he isn't the strong one. He is weaker, he is injured, and he cannot and will not supersede his brother. He doesn't even have the guts to stand up to Kendall in the way Shiv does, but he does deliver a much more cutting final blow. Which is a hell of a thing, because Shiv's final blow is...
I love you. I love you, but I cannot fucking stomach you.
Roman? After Kendall tried to beat the shit out of him, Roman comes for his brother's soul. Not only does he make a cold-hearted jab about Kendall's kids not being biologically his, he says this.
Hey, we are bullshit.
We are not bullshit.
We are bullshit. You are bullshit. You're fucking bullshit, man. I'm fucking bullshit. She's bullshit. It's all fucking nothing. Man, I'm telling you this because I know it, okay? We're nothing.
No matter how much Kendall hates it, Roman's right. Logan told the three of them that they weren't serious people in the second episode of season 4, and he was right. Logan's wife Marcia told Shiv that Logan built them a playground and they think it's the whole world, and she was right. These three do not have any real claim to the power they think they deserve, and at the last minute, Roman sees it. He gives up the chase. He lets someone he despises buy Waystar, and he moves on with his life. He goes to a bar, and he doesn't say a word, but he does order a martini. Do you know whose favorite drink that is?
The martini.
Carry that torch, slime puppy. Of the three Roy children, I see Roman as having the most... optimistic ending? That's not quite the right word. Is returning to the life of a nihilist, heedless playboy optimistic? Well... compared to the howling emptiness that is Kendall's new life, and Shiv's future of being K. Corleone 2 Electric Boogaloo, yeah, I'd say it is. Maybe now that he's free of the endless pit of toxic waste that was the family business, Roman Roy can find something and or someone that'll actually make him happy.
Well, then you kill me, you chop my dick off, something. I'm kidding, but you know what I'm saying. You eat me, I eat you, like they do in Germany. Anyway, a lot to think about. I get it, so let it. Bye.
I wouldn't bet on it, though. Chapter 4, The Disgusting Brothers. The fish out of water role is a common one in fiction. Someone who enters the world the characters inhabit at the same time the audience does, so there's someone to explain the rules to. What you can and can't say, who you can and can't say it to, the necessity to protect yourself and advance your interests among this collective of the most selfish people imaginable. And so, let us examine our flopping little Succession fish. Greg Hirsch.
Yeah, would you like that? Would you like that, pretty boy like you?
Greg is introduced to us as a pretty typical 20-something screw-up. The first thing he does is smoke a joint in his car before his first day as a mascot at a Waystar Royco theme park. Oh, hi, Julia Murney. Get too high and puke out of the eye holes of his costume, costing him his job. He calls his mom in a panic, cooking up some cockamamie story about a kid who definitely wasn't him, hotboxing his car and getting him high. Mama Hirsch, who has clearly dealt with this kind of shit before, tells Greg to clean himself up, put on a suit, and go to his great-uncle Logan's birthday party to ask about getting in on the family business. Greg's connection to the core Roy clan is a lot more tenuous than most of our main characters. His grandfather is Logan's brother, Ewan, a bleeding-heart liberal who doesn't really get along with the man who runs...
Waystar Royco? We do hate speech and roller coasters.
Ewan still sits on the board of Hate Speech and Roller Coasters Incorporated, and he never does much of anything concrete to combat his brother's aspirations to rule the world, but I'm sure that doesn't make him a hypocrite at all. Anyway, Greg slowly weasels his way into the outer edge of the inner circle. He gets Logan's ear and seems to be well on his way to establishing a foothold, but then Logan has a stroke at the end of the pilot. So he has to turn to the rest of the family. Shiv and Roman give him conflicting demands about fetching legal papers and a sentimental token, so he forgets the papers to please Shiv and brings Logan's sweater along to please Roman. He comforts a shaken Marcia by saying what a nice guy Logan was for offering him a job, and then he makes the most important connection of the show. Tom Wambsgans says that if Greg comes down to the office, he'll make sure he's taken care of.
We talking to each other on the poop deck of a majestic schooner?
Few pairings are more pivotal to Succession than that between Rose and Greg and Gilden Tom. Not only do they sit at the center of many key plot developments, but their dynamic is representative of the show's main thematic through lines. The poison drips through, remember? The Roys treat Tom like shit. Kendall and Roman think of him as little more than Shiv's boy toy. Logan sees him as inherently lesser. Shiv, his spouse, doesn't seem to really give a shit about her spouse beyond his utility to her. Tom is full of all of these negative emotions and doesn't really have anything to do with them. And then Greg wanders into his life, needing someone to shepherd him through this world of obscene wealth and power.
Here's the thing about being rich, okay? It's fucking great. Okay, it's like being a superhero, only better. You get to do what you want, the authorities can't really touch you, you get to wear a costume, but it's designed by Armani, and it doesn't make you look like a prick.
Tom leads Greg down the garden path into this world of 4-digit vodka bottles and exorbitantly expensive restaurants serving songbirds that need to be eaten under a napkin, the whole time preaching about how good and right it is to carry this kind of wealth and status. Tom has fully bought into the American dream, how if you play your cards right, you can live your life free of the constraints of a price tag. And Greg is an attentive student, learning about more than just the perks of wealth. Early in season 1, Tom becomes the head of Waystar's Cruises division, which sure seems like a step up at the time. But the moment he starts, the outgoing head of Cruises hands Tom a nuclear bomb, pointed directly at the company and set to go off in Mr. Wambsgans' office.
We can minimize the incident to avoid negative PR.
Incidents like
theft, sexual assault, rape, murder.
Okay, the bad ones.
Yeah.
Turns out, Cruises has a history of horrific treatment toward women, especially women considered lower on the social ladder. Tom is now aware of a trail of sexual assault, coercion, extortion, and outright murder perpetrated by his employer. So what does he do? He finds the nearest thing to a non-real person he has at hand. Greg.
That was the only 2-hour period in which you did not send an email to Mr. Hirsch with the title, "You can't make a Tomlet without breaking some Gregs."
He tells Greg everything about the brewing scandal he's just learned, passing down the virus Bill infected him with. Shortly after, he exploits Greg's knowledge and browbeats him into going in and destroying the incriminating documents from the company records. Greg has to sign an activity log, exposing him to a world of hurt if the justice system ever finds out about this cover-up. And this is immediately after Greg had to drive his curmudgeonly grandfather down from Canada for 12 hours with no music or conversation.
I'm driving my grandpa down for Thanksgiving.
Oh, Greg, fuck your grandpa.
Okay, you're on speakerphone, Tom.
Well, I shouldn't be, Greg.
But our boy doesn't just take this lying down. He saves several of these documents as leverage, hiding them in a folder in his desk labeled secret. About a season later, he tells Tom about this leverage in his usual bumbling aw shucks manner, and Tom immediately susses out what his protege is going for.
But would it be bad for me to, mention those to you now?
Are you asking if you can blackmail me?
This is the character of Greg Hirsch. Someone who starts off the story as not necessarily a bad person, but certainly someone who is not overly concerned with personal ethics. He starts lying and scheming and deceiving the second he arrives in Logan's New York penthouse, and he does not stop until the show is done. Greg is Succession's answer to Littlefinger. He's not in a position to wield and flex authority like the core Roy clan, so he has to amass influence in other ways. He learns that subservience is a straightforward way to endear himself to powerful people, especially Tom. By the time he reveals his subterfuge with the documents to Tom, he isn't even angry. He's impressed at the depths Greg has sunk to and how well he's taking after his teachers. Greg, the man who initially professed his reluctance to get involved with ATN due to its cancerous effect on American culture, slowly proves to not have any principles at all.
This isn't a meeting. This is a precursor to see if I might be willing to meet.
Through the first 3 seasons of Succession, Greg has to be persuaded to do immoral things. Tom berates him into staying at ATN with him. He coerces Greg to shred the cruise's documents, and he later talks the egg into going along with his plan to betray Shiv and entrench Logan's power. By the time we get to that last one, in the finale of season 3, Greg's response to Tom's invitation to join him in a deal with the devil is,
"What am I gonna do with a soul anyways? Souls are boring." Boo, souls.
Greg's bumbling, awkward demeanor never really goes away, but the person underneath all of the stumbling bluster morphs into a monster over the course of the show on the same level as Tom and the Roys. He works on the same principle of following the money that the rest of them do. He's with Kendall at the beginning of season 3 until the #1 boy refuses to reward him for his service. He ignores his grandfather's warning to leave Waystar Royco, costing himself a place in the old man's will. He'd been in a position to inherit millions from Ewan, but he decided to follow Logan's wishes instead. Ewan decides to leave his money to Greenpeace, so Greg does the only logical thing. He sues Greenpeace. The Greenpeace suit is not a core plot point, it mostly amounts to a few throwaway jokes in season 3, but it does summarize how far Greg the Egg has fallen. He went from someone who knew nothing of the world of wealth and power, relatively, he did still have a comically wealthy grandfather, to someone who sues an environmental charity to protect the millions he sees as his own. By the end of season 3, Greg fits in perfectly with the Roys, all the principles he claims to have tossed to the wind in favor of the dragon's horde. But oh gods, Greg goes full heel in season 4. He was sliding down the morality scale all show, but in the last several episodes he falls off the bottom into the dickhead pit. It starts in the 2nd episode when Tom charges him with informing Logan's girlfriend that she won't be getting the newscaster spot she wants.
Great package, maybe a little, the arms aren't right.
It's bumpy, and Carrie is pissed with his half-hearted reassurances and explanations, but it largely goes off without further hitches. So HR gets an idea. HR gets a terrible, awful idea. It isn't long before Greg takes up a role as ATN's firing machine, informing dozens of employees that they're being let go over a muted Zoom call, reading from a prepared statement while Tom mocks them with fake tears off in the corner. If you or anyone you know had the displeasure of working a media job during the pandemic, you have some idea of what this is like. I've been let go over the phone before. It is a singularly dehumanizing experience. You feel like a broken cog in a massive machine well outside of your control. At least I didn't have to deal with this shit.
Final day of employment. I'm seeing some confusion in the chat. Nice. Done.
All of the markers of our fish out of water are still there, but our fish is swimming around happily in the deep end now. Later that episode, Greg attends the pre-election tailgate party at Tom and Shiv's swanky triplex, where the hosts, or more accurately the host's servants, serve up sliders and fries in a desperate attempt to come across as more relatable. Lucas Matson, Succession's Fortinbras, comes along with his comms director Ebba and his right-hand man Oscar in tow. By now, we have a pretty good idea of just how hard Matson sucks. He's an arrogant jerk, forcing the Roys and their entourage to fly out to Norway to settle a sale before they can even bury Logan. During this episode, Ebba reveals he's pulling his company's subscriber numbers out of thin air, and also that he's not even a real coder.
Someone gave him like a box of tech and he took it to market. Bravo.
Remind you of anybody? But the worst thing about Matson as a person is how he treats Ebba. Ebba! They were a couple at some unspecified point in the past, and after they broke up, he took to sending her frozen bricks of his blood, half a liter at a time. At the party, with Greg sitting next to him, a wildly stoned Matson starts taunting Ebba about firing her, and Greg sees an opportunity to suck up to someone powerful. So what does he do? He offers to fire Ebba then and there, and he's apparently totally serious. The arc of Greg finding people to fire begins all the way back in season 2, when he offers Tom 50 skulls to present to Logan as a cost-cutting measure. Those skulls are all people whose livelihoods will be destroyed so Tom can pretend to be a big boy for his father-in-law, but that doesn't seem to bother Greg any. He doesn't get any better from here. Greg spends the last few episodes instructing ATN employees to call the election for a fascist, trying to prevent Ewan from giving a eulogy at his brother's funeral, and throwing Tom under the bus in an attempt to get in good with the siblings. While at a bar with Matson, the tech mogul and Oscar start talking in Swedish, So Greg pulls out his phone and turns on a live translator, where he finds out that Mattson intends to kick Shiv to the curb. He doesn't know yet that Mattson intends to promote Tom instead, but he does know that this information is a live bomb that could swing the sail away from the Swedes' camp. So he rings up Kendall and informs him, trying to secure himself a high-level position in the Quad, as he so desperately tries to term it.
So I have something huge. Dude, I'm in the center of the fucking universe with, like, knowledge to fucking, like, take down solar systems, man.
That last maneuver backfires on him big time when Mattson still succeeds in buying the company, and it seems like all his lying and scheming and sucking up will have been for naught, but Tom still elects to keep his fellow disgusting brother around. He takes one of the stickers that the mourners had been using to claim Logan's stuff earlier in the episode and plants it on Greg's forehead, signifying that he will continue to protect him, but also that he fucking owns him.
But I got you. I got just enough capital. I got you.
Power without status. Proximity to wealth without possession of it. Greg Hirsch spends Succession's run trying to scheme his way into a position of authority, but he ends up exactly where he started, desperately clinging on to Tom with no other realistic way to hang on at Waystar Royco.
If it is to be said, so it is.
Indeed, cousin Craig. Chapter 5. Napoleon's mummified penis. Early in the show, Connor Roy says that he's bidding on certain items from Napoleon's estate, including but not limited to his dried-out sexual characteristics.
It's obviously not an item of interest to serious scholars, but as a curio, sure. A British surgeon snipped it off.
Connor's trying to buy Napoleon's dick.
Naturally. Is it pickled in a jar, or...?
It's dried.
Connor's family ridicules him over it, as usual, but it doesn't seem to bother him much. He keeps an eye on the auction regardless of how much his father and siblings roast him for it. And you get the sense that this is not the first time he's been the butt of the joke in the Roy family. I've been referring to Kendall, Shiv, and Roman as the important Roys, because that's how they're perceived and treated in universe. They're the ones Logan thought of as the heirs to his legacy, not Connor. They're all full siblings, while Connor was born out of Logan's first marriage with another unnamed woman. He's substantially older than the other three, and when Roman says that everyone at the tailgate party thinks he's a joke, he isn't entirely wrong. Connor isn't just the butt of the joke for the characters for most of the show, he's the butt of the joke for us, too.
I'm not saying I would make a better CEO. That's unsaid.
It's not unsaid when you say it.
No, I'm not saying it, so in fact it is unsaid.
All of the Roy children have delusions of grandeur, but Connor's are certainly the grandest. He's bored, living as an idle billionaire on his huge ranch in the middle of nowhere, named after the site of one of Napoleon's greatest victories, and he wants to make something of himself. He clearly doesn't have a future at Waystar, so what's a comically wealthy, libertarian-ish Roy to do? Very simple. Run for president! Connor's presidential campaign is an undercurrent throughout the latter 3 seasons of the show, and it's largely played for laughs. The first major thing he does to throw his hat in the ring is to release a video of himself in his...
ludicrously
kitchen with what looks like a beer, talking about how wildly unfair it is that he has to pay taxes on all the wealth he's created. He proposes a flat tax rate for all Americans to be worked down to 0 over the course of a decade, and then goes on to say he won't pay taxes. He even invites the government to come arrest him.
And if you want to arrest me, go ahead. No, really, just go ahead and try.
Quick question. Do you think he even knows what a jail is?
He literally only knows it from Monopoly.
They obviously don't, because, they have more important things to do. But Connor tries posturing as a conservative outsider, fighting against the elites. If I had 1,000,000 years, I couldn't explain how ridiculous the idea of a flat universal tax rate is, let alone the idea of carving it down to 0. How do you think the government pays for things, Con? But that's beside the point. Connor's beliefs are incidental. They are naked self-interest hiding behind a thin veneer of political fundamentalism. All of the Roys offer us an inroad to the delusional self-images among the uber-rich, but Connor's is the clearest view to their imagined right to rulership and ownership. All this money he's inherited is rightfully his, according to Connor, and the government taking it from him for such frivolous things as public works projects is a great crime. This is the kind of guy who would write an outraged op-ed in the Wall Street Journal about the government attacking the rights of Americans whenever Congress considers raising the capital gains tax. His campaign largely makes for amusing background noise, especially in Season 2 when they all go visit the Pierce clan and he meets the man who would eventually become his campaign manager, a man who looks to have been plucked directly from a Dickens novel. I never get tired of hearing about Connor's campaign and the various levels of delusion it brings on, especially at the end of Season 2. See, while Connor is pouring millions upon millions of dollars into his doomed campaign, he's also bankrolling his escort-turned-partner Willa's Broadway aspirations, and he's run into a bit of a liquidity problem. He turns to his dad to ask for some help, but the degree of help he seeks is a little bit different from what you or I might look for.
I'm just wondering if I can hit you for like a little $100 million.
$100 million. Connor Roy asks his dad for $100 million, like it's just a little spare cash to get him out of a jam. Because when you're this rich, and you've been this rich your entire life, you get used to imagining the world on a higher price scale than everyone else does. Connor tells Greg that the $5 million he stands to inherit from Ewan is terrible, because it kills your motivation to work but isn't enough to retire on. He and Kendall talk about the $5 million Logan paid for his mausoleum as a good deal. Money is kind of a nebulous concept when you're this rich. You just kind of say numbers and the people around you make it work. But that money is small comfort when you don't really have anyone in your life you can count on beyond the money. Connor's family treats him like an afterthought. Logan and his siblings turn his post-rehearsal dinner karaoke party into a business argument, and then Logan skips his wedding to Willa for a meeting with Mattson. When he asks Willa if she's just with him for the money, she admits that the financial comfort is a non-zero part of their arrangement.
Well, I mean, there is something about money and safety here, yeah.
Connor has had to get used to doing without when it comes to genuine affection, and he hasn't really had a choice. To hear him say it,
I'm a plant that grows on rocks and lives off insects that die inside of me.
He's in a pretty rough place when he says that. Not only did his family turn his rehearsal dinner into yet another business argument, but his bride-to-be also fled with seemingly no intent to return. Connor knew his relationship with Willa wasn't exactly true love. It was a huge scandal when he started bringing her to family events because of her profession, and she was reluctant at best to take their relationship to the next level. Do you know how he proposed to her? At somebody else's wedding, no less?
Will you make me the most happiest man / most bulletproof candidate in the world?
Yeesh. This is what happens when you live in the Roy family. Your personal life and your professional aspirations get all tangled up until you can't tell one from the other to the detriment of both. And Connor's understanding of what a healthy personal life is supposed to look like is fatally flawed. It's hard to really blame him, though. When he was a kid, Logan had his mother institutionalized, and while it was never confirmed in the show, it's strongly implied that it was against her will. All Connor had for consolation was cake, specifically Victoria sponge cake, which was all he ate for a week. Connor can't eat Victoria sponge anymore because of that. That really sums up how Logan treats his eldest child. Not really with the active abuse he hurls at Kendall, Shiv, and Roman, but more with a sense of disdain and dismissal. He doesn't give Connor a second thought in most situations. This man skipped his son's wedding for a business meeting, all the while telling him he'd try to make it. Bullshit. He was getting on a plane to Sweden while Connor's wedding boat pulled away from the dock. He wasn't going to try to make anything. He was just exploiting his children once again, holding a crumb of affection just out of reach while they helplessly chased after it. Classic Logan Roy. Connor is, obviously, the last Roy to find out his father is dead. When his siblings finally tell him, he has the most genuine reaction of the four of them.
Oh man. You never even liked me.
He then backpedals to say he never had a chance to make Logan proud of him, but he's absolutely right. Logan didn't like him. He didn't even care about him. So when the other three kids leave to go see Logan's body unloaded from the plane he died on, Connor doesn't join them. He stays with what's left of the wedding party, getting married to the only person who ever shows him anything resembling genuine affection. And you know what? I'm happy for him. You go, Connor Roy. In this instance and this instance alone. That instance ends pretty fucking quick, though. He's not a major player again until the tailgate party, when Mencken's camp notices that Connor's number might be enough to flip the election away from Mine Coles. Connor really doesn't seem to give a shit that Mencken's policies would be harmful to the nation. All he cares about is that his role as an elite is venerated in this government. The way he pitches an ambassadorship in Oman to Willa is quite telling, saying they will have diplomatic plates and could drive on the sidewalk if they wanted to. Willa, who is perturbed that the Sultan's word is law over there, responds like a rational person.
We wonder, Roman, if he might have invested too much in this campaign to just, drop out now. Yeah.
So he turns Mencken down. But once the election nightmare rolls around, Khan is forced to face the fact that he does not have any realistic shot at becoming president. He's not wild about it, so he goes crawling back to Mencken and asks for that ambassadorship in exchange for conceding toward the person you'd get if you asked Siri to show you a neo-Nazi politician. Willa isn't thrilled, but once the ambassadorship is moved to Slovenia, or Slovakia, they don't really care, she is placated by the idea of jet-setting from Vienna to Venice in one day. But by the end of the show, the two of them are planning for a long-distance relationship that I imagine isn't going to go great. I've been in long-distance relationships before. They can work, but there really has to be something there, and I don't think money is enough to bridge this particular gap. One problem, though. The long-distance relationship is predicated on Khan heading over to Europe for Mencken, while Willa stays behind to pitch a new play. The last one went quite poorly. In order for that to happen, though, Mencken has to actually be the president. Despite the best efforts of Roman Roy in that 8th episode I keep lampshading, his victory is far from conclusive. In fact, it seems like it might die in the courts. Willa, after all her talks with Connor about how everyone in her life hates Mencken, actually seems disappointed. Seems like someone was looking forward to getting some space from her loving husband. Not great news for the plant that lives on rocks, but I'd be surprised if she leaves. She did say she was happy when he asked. That's the note we leave Connor on, with his wife seeming less than joyful that her husband will be sticking around town. But our number 4 boy is used to doing without, and he'll make do. He'll find some other ridiculous aspiration to hold his attention. Maybe he'll try to be emperor of France or something, I don't know. But whatever he does, they better keep the butter pats warmed while he's there.
Complacent. You're fired. You're all fired.
Sure, bud. Chapter 6, The Piss-Mad King of England. I should probably talk about Logan Roy at some point, huh? Logan is less a character on Succession and more a force of nature. He is a cruel, heartless, abusive, hardcore capitalist who prizes absolute victory in every situation above everything else. He is both venerated and despised by everyone he interacts with, from his children to his employees to... well, that's about it, really. Waystar Royco is Logan's whole life. If you don't have anything to do with Waystar, Logan probably won't give you a second thought. He's spent his entire life building his news business into a worldwide Goliath, so powerful that conservative politicians have a hard time holding on to authority without the approval of Logan Roy. Let's take his relationship with the president, who never gets a name beyond the Raisin. The two seem to have an uneasy, symbiotic relationship, albeit one where Logan holds all the real power. This man makes the President of the United States sit on hold before deigning to speak to him. But that symbiosis falls apart when the cruise scandal breaks and Waystar is left exposed to major legal trouble.
If that raisin hangs me out to dry, I'm quite willing to do the same to him.
Well, if we're going to be real, maybe the president has not been feeling like your coverage has been very helpful or truthful lately.
It could get a lot fucking worse.
Logan tries to browbeat the Justice Department into dropping the investigation and letting him carry on unhindered, but the president and his lackeys don't bite. And so, Logan passes down an edict to his newsroom from on high. Tear the Raisin to shreds. The ATN team turns on the president, constantly hounding him about how he is unfit to hold his office in one way or another. And it works so well that the Raisin decides not to run for re-election 6 months before the polls open. 6 months! Only 5 people have ever lost a presidential election while running as an incumbent, and one of them was the Cheeto Dust fascist who was in the middle of botching a response to a global pandemic. Sitting presidents tend to fare pretty well if they decide to pursue second terms, but Logan Roy is such a menace that the Raisin decided not to follow through on what would very likely be a sure thing. And with the presidency soon to be up for grabs, the responsibility falls to the King of America to anoint a successor.
We found ourselves a fucking T-Rex, okay? He's box office. The guy is fucking Diesel. He's good on camera, he's fun, he'll fight.
Season 3, Episode 6 sees the Roys head to a CPAC-like event where the various Republican presidential hopefuls audition for Logan's support. ATN has a direct line to the main conservative voter base of old people scared of gender-fluid cancel culture or whatever the hell it is this week, so support from the owner of ATN is key if you want to make real headway in the Republican Party. Logan doesn't seem too enthusiastic about any of the candidates, but then Roman has a great idea. Let's back the neo-Nazi!
Fascists are kind of cool.
Jared Mencken is the most dangerous kind of extremist. He's handsome and charming, and seems like he'd be a perfectly reasonable person to the typical American voter, but then he opens his mouth.
And you know, if Franco or H or Travis Bickle had a good pitch, fuck it, I'm a man for all seasons.
The H is quite telling there, no? Mencken talks about how he'll pull good ideas from any source, but it's hard to point to any good ideas H had if you weren't looking at it from a hard-right viewpoint. And it's difficult to get more hard-right than this fucker.
I like this country. Yeah, let's just take a beat before we fundamentally alter its composition.
No beat is going to be long enough for a person like Mencken, just like the H he oh so casually cites as an influence for his ideology. And worse still, he has the charisma to take a substantial chunk of the voter base along with him, and that is what matters to Logan. I don't see Logan as a fascist. He was born under the shadow of fascism and fled from it with his brother at a very young age. However, he is a man with zero political principles beyond what will add the most zeros to his bank account. And Roman makes a convincing pitch that backing Mencken will help them keep up with the increasing polarization of the American public discourse. Oh, and Connor tries to put himself forward as the conservative candidate most worthy of Logan's full-throated support, and all he gets is Greg, saying he feels he has an obligation to his country to ask that Logan not make Connor president. Logan barely even acknowledges it before getting back down to business. Go back to your Toys Con, the big kids are talking. Logan's support for Mencken is a direct line to his defense of Mark Ravenhead, ATN's deeply unsubtle Tucker Carlson parallel. He's clearly not happy when he finds out that Ravenhead named his dog after Hitler's, and that isn't helped when Tom sits him down to talk it out and finds out that he's read Mein Kampf at least twice, and that he doesn't think that 6 million murdered Jews merit a mention when discussing World War II. But no matter how unhappy he is, what does he say? Because if he fired Ravenhead, then that could anger his loyal audience of H-simps, which could affect ATN's bottom line, and that is all Logan really cares about at the end of the day. He doesn't care if he employs and platforms fascists. He doesn't care if the people in his cruises division assault and murder vulnerable women. All he cares about is growing his dragon's horde.
You make your own reality, and once you've done it, apparently, everyone's of the opinion it was all so fucking obvious.
All that matters to him is his victory and control over everything. And whenever he is denied either, Logan's reaction is blind rage.
I will win.
Logan Roy cannot stand to lose at anything. Ever. This goes beyond the competitive streak a lot of us have and devolves into a pathological hatred. Everything he does is built around his psychotic drive to achieve victory, to the point that when his grandson informs him that he lost at a fun little parlor game on Thanksgiving, he hits him. When he finds out a biographer is working on a book about him, a plot point I desperately wanted to bear fruit that never came up again, he humiliates his senior employees on a corporate retreat in a fascinating display of his twisted psyche.
Feed the piggies, guest of honor! That's it, pour on the floor!
Logan invents this game, Boar on the Floor, changing the rules as he sees fit to humiliate those he finds worthy of denigration. So, Tom, Greg, and Carl end up wrestling for a sausage on the floor while everyone else chants at them. This is ostensibly an attempt to root out disloyalty in his company, since someone had to have talked to the biographer. It was Greg, the Machiavellian little shit. But it's really just a demonstration of how Logan cannot handle losing control over any facet of his life. Logan Roy is as horny for power as Tywin Lannister, with the inferiority complex to boot. And much like Tywin Lannister, Logan's supposedly unimpeachable ability in the field he's chosen is nowhere close to the mythical image ascribed to him. He is imagined as a stereotypical captain of industry, someone whose will to create wealth and jobs has propelled him to the top of the heap after crossing the ocean with nothing but his work ethic. Typical American dream shit. He runs the country because he's worked so hard to get to where he is, so he deserves to. Logan Roy won capitalism. Well, as enjoyable as it is, telling people to fuck off all the time and building your business strategy based on your personal whims is not a great way to keep an unchallenged, solid grip on power. Logan can't really do anything about his failing health, which undermines his ability to lead his company, but there are plenty of other missteps he makes over the course of succession that tarnish his reputation as a business mastermind. We find out early in Season 1 that Waystar is in billions of dollars of debt thanks to Logan's actions, and the only way Kendall can keep the bank that holds the debt from yoinking Waystar away from Roy control is by bringing Stewie, the best character, onto the company as an angel investor. Am I using that term correctly? I don't care. Logan derides him for it, especially as Stewie becomes a thorn in the old man's side for the rest of the show, but it's not like there were any better options.
Okay, well, if the stock drops, we're entitled to ask for a payment in full.
Uh-huh, exactly. Technically, yeah. So, what will we do here in reality?
If it breaches 130, you've broken the covenant and we will want repayment.
Yes, very serious.
Logan was just about dead for a good chunk of season 1, and even if he was around, I doubt he would have come up with a much better solution than the number 1 boy did. There's plenty of other little missteps, like overestimating his hold over the Raisin and almost collapsing the company under the weight of criminal negligence, throwing Frank to the curb time and time again, only to come crawling back whenever another crisis came around, refusing to make any kind of concrete plan for succession whenever he died, and then you have Pierce. Logan's quest to acquire Pierce Media Group is a multi-layered white whale. As Roman points out early on, Pierce is the news source Logan's brother Ewan turns to, so a significant portion of his desire to own it is spite. He's also tried and failed to buy it before, and his quest for it comes after his push to buy a wide swath of local TV stations and newspapers in season 1. The shameful state of local media outlets these days is a subject for another video that may be even longer than this one, but suffice it to say that staking likely billions of dollars in local media is not a wise investment in the digital age. Pierce is also a family affair, run by matriarch Nan and mere conduit Rhea Jarrell. Pierce is the MSNBC to Waystar Royco's Fox News, a more respectful and truthful news outlet that carries a level of prestige Logan's propaganda machine just can't seem to get a hold of. Armstrong and his writer's room never met a target they couldn't skewer, and the Pierce clan is a damning indictment of limousine liberalism.
Oh, stop.
They have a stately coastal manse, so well appointed that it has its own name, Turnhaven. Instead of saying grace before dinner, they quote Shakespeare. They're the kind of people who will pursue a second PhD on a whim. Nan Pierce will invite her beleaguered kitchen staff to join them for a drink, knowing full well they don't have time, then take credit for the meal they spent all day making. They even have the traditional screw-up heiress, Naomi, who was Kendall's girlfriend/dealer for a while.
And you people, you're fucking tabloids, just like all the time, pushing it and selling it until I put a cherry on top and I wrapped my fucking Audi around a highway divider.
They'll be all high and mighty about their principles, demand that Logan name Shiv his successor in a nod to liberal posturing, and then threaten to walk if he doesn't, and then throw all of that away once he says a big enough number.
I could go to 25, but it would have to be fast.
Everyone has a price, and I'm willing to bet that if somebody offered you $25 billion, you might be willing to swallow your pride and principles for that kind of check. As Logan says,
money wins.
But despite Nan Pierce being nowhere near as principled as she claims, she does have her limits. She and Logan agree on the $25 billion figure after some prodding from Rhea, who stands to gain quite a lot from the merger. Pierce also isn't doing amazing in the modern age, with its target audience of progressives growing younger and less interested in cable news by the day, so the deal is an excellent way out of a dicey financial future. And even if the deal goes through, it's not about to put Logan in a much better position. $25 billion is a pretty fucking penny, but while at a business retreat and hoping to close out the deal, New York Magazine breaks the Cruises scandal. The Roys engage in some desperate damage control, and at first, it seems like they've done enough to keep Nan on board with the sale. But then, at the end of the retreat, she and the other high-powered attendees sit down to watch a stand-up comic skewer all the titans in the audience. And what on earth would he be talking about but the massive sexual assault scandal brewing for Waystar?
I shouldn't even be joking about them like that, because they're in the midst of a hands-on investigation. Yeah, I hear there's a lot of deals going down here too, man. Somebody's gonna make a sale too, Waystar. Hey, I think that's great. That's like the Hindenburg going down there like, yeah, hydrogen blimps. Sign me up. That's the future, baby. No, that's a horrible idea. It's worse than that. At least nobody was forced to give a blowjob on the Hindenburg.
You know, the massive conglomerate set to acquire the company with Nan's family name on it. The one she intended to hold her nose and merge with for the sake of the sticker price. Nan pulls out, and then we see what happens when Logan loses out on something he really wants. We've seen Logan angry before. He was pissed when Kendall tried to hold a vote of no confidence against him. He was furious during Bore on the Floor. He seemed about ready to throttle the contractor who wrapped a raccoon carcass in plastic and stuffed it up his chimney when Logan refused to pay him. But when Nan refuses to sell her company to Logan, we see him become something he's never been before. Desperate. She fires Rhea too, correctly sussing out that Miss Jarrell has been acting in her own interest and not her employer's, and then gets in the car to leave. In a heartbeat, Logan flips from desperation to blind rage.
Hey, wait! We haven't finished! We haven't fucking finished! Do you hear me? We haven't Hey! Stop! Stop! Stop!
This man is a wild animal, operating on survival instinct and bloodlust. His goal to acquire Pierce was halfway between spite and business sense. It was the core of his strategy to dodge Sandy and Stewie's bid to buy the company out from under him, but it was also rooted in a desire to stick it to his holier-than-thou brother and get his grubby little paws on some of that sweet, sweet center-left prestige. Just about everyone except Logan, with a shred of influence at Waystar Royco, thought the Pierce acquisition was a terrible idea, including Ms. Jerry Kelman, the one person at Waystar worth listening to. Honestly, Logan missing out on the acquisition was probably a boon for him in the end. By the beginning of season 4, when Nan is looking to get the family out of the news game once again, the asking price the siblings give is $10 billion, and that's a bit of a reach. The start of season 4 is about a year after the initial deal at Argestes collapsed, and it's already lost more than half of the value Logan pegged it at. And they didn't even get bought out by Sandy and Stewie, so the rationale of becoming too big to fail didn't really work out either. And herein, dear viewer, lies the point. Logan Roy is maybe, possibly, a little bit full of shit. Waystar Royco is bloated, outmoded, and falling behind the times. This is a problem a lot of legacy media giants face nowadays, and Lord Logan's plans for saving his realm don't seem to have a lot of promise. Buying up local TV and newspapers? Merging with another legacy media dinosaur? Casting his lot in with H&M Hitler? The only decent idea was buying Gojo and supplying top-tier streaming tech with well-watched content, and the lion's share of the credit there does not go to Logan. We spend the first 3 seasons of Succession watching the ballyhooed Logan Roy get bailed out by his senior staff and his idiot kids time and time again, all the while lurching off on flights of fancy that seem to only bring him closer to his death. Nothing drives the plot of the show forward more than Logan's failing health. He has a stroke in the pilot episode and spends the rest of the show in a state of constant physical decline. He has multiple scares before his death, including a bout with heat exhaustion at lunch with an investor, a UTI flare-up during the shareholder meeting that'll determine the fate of his ownership, and repeated allusions to his mental state not being what it once was. Hell, the first thing that happens on Succession is Logan pissing on the floor of his penthouse suite in a confused haze. He is an old-ass man, and old-ass men are not known for their immaculate health. By the nature of the show's twistiness, I kept expecting Logan's health scares to be fake-outs. I thought he was faking his stroke in the pilot to fuck with his kids. I thought his death was a massive test to see how everyone would respond, but no. Logan's just an old man who cannot buy immortality no matter how many dollars he piles up in his bank account. Logan Roy spent his whole life trying to make himself so powerful he was invincible to any outside force, and in most senses he succeeded. He avoided prison time, he avoided accountability, and he avoided any sort of consequence for his actions outside of losing the occasional deal. But no matter what he did, Logan could never escape the simple, unavoidable brutality of disease. It's difficult for us to understand nowadays just what a menace polio was to the world. It wasn't as present as other infamous diseases like tuberculosis or malaria, but the effects could be dire. Paralysis and death are not common side effects, but they do happen. You've probably seen pictures of what polio can do to a person, and we are blessedly lucky for the existence of Dr. Salk's vaccine. But Logan is old enough that when he was a child, it changed the course of his life for the worse. Once upon a time, Logan and Ewan were joined by a baby sister, Rose. As told by Ewan at Logan's funeral during his spectacular eulogy, Logan came home sick from boarding school at age 6. Shortly after, little Rose contracted polio and didn't make it. Logan blamed himself, and the aunt and uncle they were living with did very little to convince him otherwise. We never get much in the way of concrete backstory behind Ewan's eulogy, but we do see scars on Logan's back that imply he took beatings when he was young. His childhood of fleeing the Nazis, an abusive home life, and the loss of his sister instilled in Logan a desperate drive to be untouchable. It's fitting that after all he did, after he spent his life building a castle on a hill out of reach of anyone who could hurt him, Logan died because of disease fermenting in his own old, broken-down body, largely because of his own vanity. Logan wants to be seen as strong, and there are no depths he won't sink to in order to maintain that image. He'll hit his children, he'll hit his grandchildren, he'll carve his heirs out of the company he built and sell it off to Mark Zuckerberg. He'll even take off his compression socks on an airplane to look hotter to his mid-20s girlfriend. That last one is probably a big part of what got him killed. The pressure differential in airplanes is no joke, and not taking your blood pressure seriously after a stroke is deathly stupid. But when have logic or reason ever been a consideration for Logan Roy? A logical person wouldn't buy up local TV stations in the late 2010s. A logical person wouldn't throw $25 billion at another bloated media titan that'll be worth barely a third of that a year later. A logical person would have nipped cruises in the bud before it became a scandal that threatened to bring the company to its knees. Logan Roy is not some mythical genius who conquered the world due to some unknowable skill or unmatched tenacity. He's just a guy who started a company at the right time and spent years pulling the right levers to get him to where he is. He's not a god. He's not 100 feet tall. He's a guy who had a painful childhood that pushed him down the road to a life of bottomless cruelty. He's a
full fucking beast!
And that's all there is to it. Chapter 7. Season 4, Episode 8. America Decides. Remember November 8th, 2016? That time the largest plurality of the country voted for a deeply flawed but still qualified candidate, but our asinine election system put the pile of cartilage and a bad hairpiece and fake tan into the most powerful seat in the world? I found myself thinking about that night quite a lot during Season 4, Episode 8 of Succession, when the long-foreshadowed election night finally comes to pass. Daniel Jimenez, written to be the closest thing you can get to a generic Democrat, up against metrosexual Mussolini. The polling points to a close but solid win for Jimenez, and the internal polling from both camps backs that up. Mencken even calls Roman over to his HQ to discuss how ATN might cover his impending loss in the general election. If only. America Decides is a horror movie. Plain and simple. A happier ending is dangled in front of us, and then Armstrong and company spend an hour slowly, agonizingly ripping it to shreds. We know very little of Jimenez's actual policy goals, but he's a Democrat in 2020, you can fill in the blanks. Yay status quo, boo open fascism, nominally progressive while refusing to take an actual stand on anything. You know the drill. Jimenez's beliefs and platforms aren't what matters here. We barely know the guy by the time the polls open in-universe. We've only really been exposed to his camp's reaction to Kendall and Roman's clumsy maneuvering. Best I can tell, he has at least something resembling principles, but that fades into the background of America Decides pretty quick. The core conflict in this cruel joke of an episode is, what else? Another snit fit between the Roy heirs.
No, you're gonna like Big Brother it right now. That's what you're gonna do?
No, like what?
Oh, like when, if you want roast chicken and I wanted steak, we always had chicken.
Normally this is something we could just sit back and enjoy, knowing that no matter how rich and powerful these assholes are, their machinations won't have that much of an effect on the world at large, but that's not what's happening right now. They're not just fighting over who gets to be daddy's favorite anymore. They're in charge of a prominent cable news network during a presidential election, where the choice is between a bland but reasonable politician and a fascist.
I've seen your poll numbers, you're a dark horse in it. People are buying your whole... Huh?
They better buy it, or I'll send them to the gulag.
I've dressed Jared Mencken up in a lot of cute names and jokes over the last 16,000 words, and I'm gonna do it some more. But America Decides yanks the wool away from our eyes and forces us to stare the ugliness on display right in the face. Mencken and the ideas he represents are abhorrent, and the fact that he is one of the two final candidates to lead the most powerful country on earth is a damning indictment of the United States. Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, even foreign figures like Boris Johnson, Viktor Orban, and Vladimir Putin unveil themselves in Succession's crypto-fascist figurehead. Mencken knows how to whip up a crowd. He knows how to stoke the flames of prejudice and hatred to build a wave of negative integration in line with what he feels is good and right. He's more capable than Trump and more personable than DeSantis. He is a perfect storm of shit, and he would be a disaster as president. But what does that matter if he'll give you the one thing you truly want? That is the dilemma Kendall Roy faces in America Decides. Ken's not doing great. His father's dead, his mixed-race daughter is getting racially abused on the street by guys sporting merch from the company he runs, and it seems like Mencken is the only viable path to retaining the company he so badly wants to keep. Jimenez doesn't seem excited about launching into bed with ATN on day one of his administration, but some part of Kendall still knows that putting someone like Mencken into power is not a good idea.
The guy that's gonna answer our calls, the fucking guy printing US dollars. This is all upside.
Apart from the matter of him smashing the country to pieces.
Oh God, don't be such a fucking prissy. Okay, maybe we could deal with a dose of that, right? Like a nice little dose of the Frighteners, wine shit back 20.
Our number one boy may have the moral compass of an 18th century French aristocrat, but even he knows that Mencken is dangerous. Kendall posing as a norm-breaking revolutionary is agonizing, sure. But the only thing worse than Kendall Roy, billionaire Bernie bro, is Kendall Roy, at least Mussolini made the trains run on time guy. He seems to be aware of what he's doing on some level. He's worried enough about his mixed-race family to send out security to follow them around without telling them, but he's not worried enough to turn down the fascist-friendly fire hose he's in charge of.
I was raising our daughter while you were fucking running a racist news organization.
Great. Fuck you. Come on.
Fuck me.
Come on.
Fucking dare you interrogate me.
He laments to Shiv that he isn't a good father to his children, which is a true thing. Of all the tragedies of Kendall Roy, this one hits me the hardest. Underneath all the fuck the patriarchy and all the bluster of being better than his father, Kendall's one dream is to be just like him. But in a vacuum, despite all of that, I don't think Kendall would throw his weight behind Mencken. Unfortunately, America Decides does not take place in a vacuum. It takes place in season 4 of Succession, where our characters are broken, horrible people with decades of baggage trailing behind them. The dynamic between Kendall, Shiv, and Roman is the core of this masterpiece of television, and the fate of a nation turns on it. Shiv, the liberal politico, has been vehemently opposed to Mencken since the moment we met him. Roman was the first one to float the idea of backing Mencken to Logan, and since then his support has only grown more enthusiastic.
Powerful commentary, huh?
I don't feel good necessarily about this, Roman.
Shucks.
Kendall is stuck in the middle, vacillating between his better angels and his desperate desire to stay in charge of Waystar. Mencken has offered to kill the Gojo deal in exchange for ATN being his mouthpiece, and Roman loves this idea. He didn't need an excuse to support Mencken, and we'd gotten hints about whether or not he believes in the platform Abercrombie Adolph espouses, but America Decides makes it uncomfortably clear. Roman Roy is on board with this guy. The business convenience is a nice benefit, and I'm betting a good chunk of it comes from the unprocessed nihilism surrounding his father's death, but he's bought into Mencken's idea of a more pure America. Whenever Shiv tries to object to Roman's reckless moves to prop up Mencken's presidential bid, he shouts her down, saying false flag and telling her that our concerns about democracy are boring. Here we are again with the 2016 flashbacks. Online flame lords leaning into the chaos of the Trump campaign, reveling in what this shameless showman would say next to ruffle the politico's feathers. It's all just a game.
What you kids do not understand, it's all part of the game.
The idea of business as some grand chess match is a common one on Succession, and the stakes of that game are something the Roy children, and especially Roman, really suck at understanding. They grew up in the highest of ivory towers, insulated from the concerns and problems of the world around them. Roman doesn't know the price of milk. Shiv offers hand sanitizer to someone who has to touch a poor. Connor thinks $5 million is a laughably tiny inheritance. Usually, this obliviousness is played for laughs, but America Decides shows just how damaging this isolation can be. Roman does not give a shit what Mencken's victory would mean for the most vulnerable people in America. He doesn't care that he's subverting the democratic system. All he cares about is what Logan taught him to care about. Winning the game. The game is an infectious mindset in the Roy family. This eternal, unceasing chase for daddy's approval is bad enough in any family, but when these broken people make terrible decisions, they have the potential to throw the world off its axis. Roman and Kendall's actions led to protests on the street in the middle of the night. Normally, when somebody fucks over their sibling to get ahead, it doesn't pave the way for a fascist to sit in the White House. While Roman's support of Mencken seems genuine, he wins Kendall over to his side because this fucking guy...
Don't we long sometimes for something clean once in this polluted land?
Offers to kill the Gojo deal. Kendall is so blinded with rage over his sister not being on his team in the game that he cannot process how much of a national nightmare Mencken would be if he actually gets into office. Whether or not the Roy kids end up in charge of their father's company, they will still be billionaires who can jet set around the world as they wish. They treat this like it's life and death, but it's literally just a question of whether or not 1 to 3 of them will get a job that they are bad at and not qualified for. There are many people more competent and capable at Waystar than them, including Tom and Greg. Jerry, Frank, and Carl run circles around these self-obsessed dorks. Kendall risks the safety of his family and the world at large so he can win the game. He finds out that Shiv was working with Mattson to get the Gojo deal passed through and lying to him about it. It's some fantastic reality show drama.
I fucking asked you some real questions, Shiv. I wondered why you looked like a goose trying to shit a house brick, you piece of dirt.
Because it's the game that matters. to all of them. Even Shiv, who spends 2 seasons talking about how much of a disaster Mencken would be, tosses all of that aside once her idiot brothers throw their weight behind the incredible freedom-fighting fascist, just so she can win the fucking game. It's all their father ever taught them to care about. They grew up with enough billions of dollars to be shielded from everything else, and no value or personal relationship could bring as much satisfaction as winning the game. Marcia called her fucking shot.
He made you a playground, and you think it's the whole world.
That's why America Decides is so chilling. Most of Succession is just confined to the Roy family. We get glimpses of far-right protests, and someone throws a water balloon full of piss at Logan one time, but the public is not a part of this show for the majority of its run. But for a moment, before Succession dove back into its well-loved web of personal backstabbing and intrigue, we get this brief, horrific glimpse at the massive fallout of these petty assholes' machinations.
You have no fucking idea. None. Idiot. Moron. Asshole. Fuck yourself. Stupid fuckers. Fuck you. Piece of shit. I'm the fool. Shit.
The games the rich and powerful play have a profound effect on their society, and you don't get more rich and powerful than the guy who puts the president on hold out of spite. Kendall tells us exactly how he feels about his right to the job that allows him to do these things.
I'm the eldest boy! I am the eldest boy!
He has the hereditary right to rule, and everyone who gets run over on his march toward that throne is not a real person. Those are the rules of the game, and nothing matters more than the game. Connor confirms that Logan actively pitted his children against each other to isolate weakness, and that dynamic has not gone anywhere in adulthood. They were fucked from the beginning, but that does not excuse or explain away Kendall and Roman's decision to cast their lot in with someone like Mencken, or Shiv's for that matter, or Connor's, Willa's, Tom's, Greg's, any of them really. Being a masterful player of the game does not justify their actions. They all know what Mencken is, they're not stupid. But the effect on the less significant people of the world does not matter as much to them as the game. Kendall's choice to back Mencken costs him dearly. Rava takes his kids out of the city for their own safety. Jess, his loyal assistant who stood by his side through absolutely everything, leaves him. He threw all of that away. And America Decides tells us it was all because his sister made a move in the game. The game ruins Kendall's life. It tears him away from his loved ones, it drains his life of purpose, and it makes him unhappy. And his collaboration with Mencken didn't even work. Kyle Hollister doesn't even block the Gojo deal, because of course he doesn't. The Roys may have enough wealth and power to ignite late-night protests, but their business model is dying. Logan may not have been the great genius he was cracked up to be, but he wasn't a moron either, and he recognized Waystar Royco was no longer a valuable asset for the family. They are playing this game to run a bloated, overstuffed mess of a company that's a year out from a massive sexual assault scandal. Why the fuck should Mencken care if Kendall and Roman are mad at him? Logan was the one who ran America from his C-suite. These two idiots are just malicious children who don't give a shit about anything but making daddy love them. They don't matter. Kendall Roy, the main character who spent this entire show asking if he's a good person, backs the fascist when the chips are down. All because his sister lied to him. All because of the game. Fuck. Roman's right. This is all bullshit. Not only the Roy siblings, but Waystar Royco as a whole. It's not just them, though. Mattson's bullshit. Sandy and Stewie are bullshit. The endless fretting about stock price and market cap is bullshit. None of this is real or important or useful. Oh, God damn it, am I gonna have to
expose the structural contradictions of capitalism as reified in the architecture of corporate America?
We're gonna save that for part 2. First, we need to give America Decides its due, because outside of the chilling story about the banality of evil, this episode bounces off the fucking walls. Shiv asks Greg if he finds her attractive.
Do you find me attractive, Gregory?
I don't think of things such as that.
Greg spends the entire time trying to chase the Roys off of the news floor they're not supposed to be on.
Hey, Shiv, do you mind actually not going on the floor?
It's all just peachy.
Shiv?
He also gets wasabi in the election expert's eye, and then has the brilliant idea to try to wash it out with lemon LaCroix. Fuck. He also gets wasabi in the election expert's eye, and has the brilliant idea to try to wash it out with lemon LaCroix.
Fuck me slowly, this smart.
Okay.
Put water in it. Put water in. It's what?
That's lemon! It's lemon, Greg! That's clear, it's LaCroix!
Greg betrays Shiv's sneaky shit with Mattson to Kendall after she didn't offer him anything for his loyalty.
Hey, Greg, can I ask you a question?
What's up?
Do you know if there's something going on?
What else Nate and Gil and fucking Jimenez offer you? Unlimited Social Security spending with this one weird trick?
Tom forces Greg to do cocaine.
It's medically good for your brain. It is. What are you saying? All Aztecs is stupid? Don't be a racist little bitch about it. Come on.
Shiv finally tells Tom she's pregnant with his baby, and his first instinct is to doubt the baby's existence.
Is that even true?
What?
Like, is that even true? Or is that like a new position or a tactic? Or what?
Oh, and Khan drops the most profound line in the whole show out of nowhere once the news doesn't even mention him as they announce the state he had the best chance of winning.
Alas, Kentucky Willa. Alas, vanity.
And then he goes out and delivers a concession speech toward Mencken that's really just an excuse for the writers to give their most ridiculous character a final unhinged moment.
I happen to be a billionaire. Sorry.
He promises that the con heads are coming, and he goes on a rant about people who betrayed him on the campaign trail, and it seems like he's trying to come off as menacing, but it's really just very silly. Shiv makes a laughably terrible decision and fakes a call to Nate after Kendall asks her to test the waters on Jimenez's willingness to block the deal. There's that part of the number one boy again, the part of him that isn't a garbage fire, the part that wants to build a better country for his children, but that part is not large enough or loud enough to override the petty spite that fuels Kendall. So when he finds out about the pair of paper-thin ruses that his sister was pulling, he throws all of that away and goes to the ball with the Nordstrom Nazi. We get more of Roman's desperate Logan cosplay, with him running around the news floor, pushing the talent to espouse even more hard-right hatred than usual, bullying the production staff and the in-house decision desk expert into favoring Mencken. Just the whole do whatever the fuck I want song and dance. This comes to a head early on, when the ATN team finds out about a fire at a vote counting station in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Gotta represent. Forgot the fucking bottle. God damn it. For the blissfully uninformed, living outside of the theocracy-adjacent train wreck I call home, the United States has this fun thing called the Electoral College. It's a relic of a bygone age when it made sense to stratify the voting process because long-distance communication was agonizing, but now we have infinite forms of instantaneous communication. But it's a system that favors small government conservatives, we'll get to that label in another video, so it's not going anywhere. Under the Electoral College, all 50 states plus DC, although not Puerto Rico and Guam for reasons, get a number of electoral votes based on population that get awarded to whoever wins the largest plurality of the state's vote totals. Every state has at least 3, and the more people your state has, the more votes you get. California, the largest state in the Union, has 54. If a candidate reaches 270 electoral votes, they're the next president. The problem you run into, well, the biggest problem, is that this electoral format, paired with a two-party system, means you'll have wide swaths of safe red and blue states, and then a few split states that the whole election turns on. If you live in New York or Alabama or South Dakota, congratulations! Your vote doesn't really matter because the election will not change either way. But if you live in, say, Wisconsin, and your state is full of white working-class people who lost their livelihoods in the financial crash and then spent 8 years watching the Obama administration not do as much to help as they probably could have, your state could become a core component of a hard-right presidential campaign. Donald Trump won Wisconsin by about 22,000 votes in 2016, buoyed by those former factory workers who believed him when he said he would bring back jobs. The way Wisconsin works, like plenty of other states in the Union, is that the rural areas run deep red, and the two major city centers of Milwaukee and Wisconsin balance that out to create a very purple electorate that can flip on a dime. The Dems got complacent after Obama carried Wisconsin twice with comfortable margins, Clinton never showed her face around here, and Trump picked up 10 key electoral votes on his path to 270. He never gets to the White House without the Badger State, and wouldn't you know it, the same goes for Mencken! Because the torched voting center was in Milwaukee, the lost votes would certainly have been blue, and almost certainly been blue by a large enough margin to flip Wisconsin for Jimenez. But Roman sees this as an opportunity. Despite objections from Shiv and decision desk Darwin, Rome claims that the total as it stands is a valid number to run with, and he demands ATN call Wisconsin for Mencken. They do, initially justifying it as not a real call, but That vanishes with time as it becomes clear that calling Wisconsin for Mencken means calling the United States for Mencken. He wins enough of those key purple states that the whole election turns on Wisconsin, on those missing votes in Milwaukee, and Roman Roy does not hesitate. He turns on the fascist fire hose.
Can't rerun fairly, and can't let lefty terrorism affect this, so let's call it.
On what precedent? By what authority?
By the power of me, the CEO of Waystar, telling you what to put on the telebox mouth, people.
Once the men shout down Shiv's objections over the health of democracy, Tom dispatches Greg to go inform the control room that they need to prepare for a national Mencken call. Calling Wisconsin red means that when Arizona goes red, they have two choices: retract the Wisconsin call or call the whole election. And these dipshits hop aboard the SSSS. Greg heads out to tell the control room the news, clearly conflicted but not about to stop. And who should he run into but Jess?
I have to go, tell them I think we're calling it for Mencken. Yeah.
Jess is, as far as I can tell, one of the only people at Waystar Royco who has a real job. Kendall dumps mountains of work on her and she never even flinches. She stands by his side through everything. The failed coup in Season 1, his desperate kowtowing in Season 2, his revolutionary play acting in Season 3, but now we finally get to see Jess as herself free of Kendall. Suddenly, it's stark how much she stands out. She works for a living. She does not have an inherited family fortune to fall back on if things go south. Her life will get much harder if Mencken is elected, and she stands her ground. She tries to stop Greg.
Yeah, I'm pressing the button. Or I'm not even pressing the button. I'm asking them to prepare to press the button.
Right, and all that does is just, like, launch a nuclear attack.
She doesn't take his excuse that it's not his choice and that it's gonna happen regardless, and she says it possibly couldn't hurt to stall. She knows this kind of thing wouldn't happen without Kendall's go-ahead, and she knows her boss as well as anybody. Maybe she's hoping that giving him a couple minutes will let him calm down and change his mind. But Greg, incapable of thinking about anything but how disobeying the higher-ups could affect his career prospects, doesn't listen.
It's not gonna change anything if I don't go, so...
A couple minutes, so, I mean...
Right.
Well,
Realistically, wow, crazy one.
Nobody at ATN stands to suffer more under a Jess administration. Nobody at ATN stands to suffer more than Jess under a Mencken administration, but none of them care. Not Kendall, not Greg, none of them. He marches on down to the control room and delivers the news. The producers look shocked. Darwin looks like he wants to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge. And then Mencken walks out and delivers a speech that would be right at home in Mein Kampf.
I am not a demagogue. I am a defender of democracy.
And it just keeps getting worse.
But democracy, it has this tendency that we have to beware to become mere transaction.
And worse.
I come begging for your vote. Welfare checkbook out. Crowning the welfare kings and queens till everyone's become a little tyrant.
And holy shit, this guy is orders of magnitude worse than Trump.
The democracy I believe in is where a leader emerged from the people, willed almost into being.
Trump never had this intellectual side. He could hardly get anything done and lurched from one scandal to the next. This man has an obvious understanding of how to get and keep power as a tyrant. If he wins this election, especially this election where the winning votes went up in smoke, he will wreak havoc on the most vulnerable people in America. And ATN will be right there, waving the flag and cheering him on. And all Roman has to say is that they made a good night of TV. Nothing happens, right?
Things do happen.
They do. Things do happen outside of the ivory tower. The Trump administration ruined countless lives. He oversaw one of the most disastrous 4-year terms in American history, and it culminated in thousands of people bum-rushing the Capitol building and building gallows outside, all while the DC police showed about 1/10 as much enthusiasm for stopping them as they do against your average Black Lives Matter protest. Mencken would be worse. Far worse. And what does Kendall say?
Some people just can't cut a deal for grit.
The game is poison. And now the Roy boys have spread that poison to America, not thinking twice about the consequences, only thinking about how they can enrich themselves now and better their chances at victory. America Decides isn't the best episode of Succession because of the usual Roy family zingers, or because Greg pours lemon LaCroix in the guy's eyes because he thinks it'll help. Those are fun and welcome elements, but this show goes well beyond the comedy. The effects of the Roy's bullshit are alluded to time and time again throughout this story, but Season 4, Episode 8 finally pulls that curtain back and shows us the horror they can inflict on the world they tower over. Not that they give a shit. See you for Part 2!
In like a year and a half. Or longer.
And when a man dies, it is sad. All of us will die one day. In this case, it is Lester who has done so.